which is alleged witch hunting of opposition parties. This in the space of 3 months after the conduct of the presidential election and also the National Assembly election. We've witnessed a lot of lawmakers being sacked. Even up to now, we still have some judgments going on them. And then recently, this was the one that happened within the week when the Abamuru of opposition, People's Democratic Party, was announced as minority leader by the Senate President during plenary. But this caused an uproar in the chamber when Senator Osita Ongo of the PDP was announced as the Senate Minority Whip, who replaced Senator Darlington Wokocha of the Labour Party. And then we have people from Labour Party coming up to say that they are not slaves. Despite the fact that it was someone from the Labour Party who was occupying the seats that left, but then the person was not represented, the seat was not represented by someone from Labour Party. And then judging by the election that has also taken place, the governorship election that took place in Bayelsa, Imo and Kogi State, some people have come up to say that perhaps it is witch hunting of opposition party from this governorship position and from the House of Assembly. Do you think that is correct, or is this just simply the law playing out in these matters?
No, it's just ignorance and stupidity that is playing out. It has nothing to do with the law, the politics, or even the reason you said. I mean, nobody is witch hunting anybody. It's just complete ignorance of how legislative activities happen. A minority, and we have clear examples in the US, the minority party determines their own leaders. It has nothing to do with the majority. So Akpabio, for example, sitting down and want to make a decisions for persons who are not members of his parties, who do not represent the same thing that he represents in parliament, is himself being very ignorant. It's not his damn business to choose who is a minority leader. It is not, look, it is not a non-legislative responsibility. He has no power to choose or determine how the minority or opposition determine themselves, determine their leadership. The minority will meet and determine their leadership and send to him. The minority will change their leadership and decide and change to him. Even the leader of the Senate is completely a leader of his own party. His party can sit down and remove him if they don't want him, or work with other minority leaders and remove him if they don't want him. So for persons who are in minority to sit down and allow Akpabio or the majority party to determine their leadership in how they are going to be an opposition in parliament, it's just bloody stupidity and ignorance of the job that they have been elected to do. And it's such a shame that these are people who use computers, watch TV, listen to news, drive in 170 million naira cars, live in hundreds of millions of naira buildings, and have no iota of knowledge of what their rights and responsibilities are in the place of work. It is, it was a big shame. Akpabio has no right nor power to choose leadership under our laws and any other laws in the world, for that example, for that matter, for the minority or for the opposition parties in parliament. They can check what is happening in the US, which is what we watch. Every of them have a TV in their offices. We pay satellite TV for them. They watch CNN. Everybody knows that the opposition political party have their own responsibilities. They have their own funding. They run the affairs of everything that goes to the minority in the House. Not for him to choose or change or elect for them their leaders. How does that happen?
Okay, all right. And before we leave that topic, because at the end of the day, the Senate President still left it for them to come up with who they felt appropriate, and then they still chose the member from the PDP. So now let us look at the things that went on in Plateau State, where almost all the people they have in the National Assembly was sacked by the court because of some anomalies in the way they emerged as the people representing their zones. So now the question to that is, who should we blame there? Is it INEC that did not follow up on this process? Is it the party itself that we should blame? Or because this is why some people have opined that perhaps it might be some sort of witch hunting to get some of these minority and the main opposition party, to get them away from seats, so perhaps they could be occupied by the leading party.
Let me explain something before I get to that. You are never going to have, even within the APC, cohesion. There will be people who disagree within the APC. You will begin to see the cracks, they will come. Those are natural human nature. Now, but I'll take you back to the analogy of the Solomon and the two women contesting the child scenario. As long as INEC leaves the name of a candidate and posts the name of a candidate as having been qualified to participate in an election, the public has a right to vote for that person, as long as, because it is the responsibility of INEC to say who is going to participate in this election, having fulfilled all conditions. So if INEC maintains the name of a candidate at an election, and people, because they believe and know that the power to put the list of candidates for an election is that of INEC and not the courts, those persons will vote for the candidate that is lawfully placed by INEC. Now, where such has happened and people voted for that candidate, and the court then said all you have done is a waste, having waited for INEC to continue to commit this offense that the courts are saying, and the courts haven't failed to punish the disobedience of its own order, it's then punishing innocent people, like killing the child in the Solomon story, for an offense that is not committed by the persons who are entitled to have the candidate of their choice in a democratic system. Because in democracy, as we have defined it, is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So the people choose the government. If the people chose this candidate, INEC having confirmed to them that that candidate is a candidate for this election, results were announced by INEC as result for those candidates in that elections. The only person to now blame for killing democracy, wiping the rights of the people, punishing innocent people, removing and installing leadership that is not democratically determined in this country must be the judiciary, as you have in this case. INEC is not being punished. Nobody is prosecuted for wrongfully putting the name of a candidate that cost the public losing their votes. The PDP that was in disobedience of that court order is not in prison yet. So the innocent people that were misled to thinking everything that was done correctly are the ones who are losing the leaders of their choice and and leaders appointed for them by the judiciary without an election. Because basically this is the wisdom that we require our judicial system to exercise. You have to be wise, learned, and understand to be fair. So how is it fair here? How is it just? How is it even right that you leave INEC that commits the offense free, you leave PDP that commits the offense free, and you punish the people that voted for the candidate? Because the PDP didn't win the elections. Innocent, ordinary persons voted, and they had not done anything wrong. They were neither parties to the case in court, nor are they INEC. So the courts now have appointed leaders for them, contrary to what they have chosen, on the belief that INEC acted correctly, that they voted correctly, that the votes were counted correctly. They had to lose all of that simply because INEC made a mistake, and INEC is out there free. Nobody is punishing the head of INEC or any other person. Nobody from the PDP who, if they disobeyed the court order, is in prison for disobedience of court order. The person who had died is the child.
Definitely. And before we round up this, I would like to ask this question, because it is being opined that perhaps to avoid all this conflict of one person being sworn in, enjoying the benefits of the seat, probably have their whole plan laid out to how they can achieve well in whichever seat or whichever position they were elected into. Some have actually suggested that perhaps it might be the best that before swearing in anyone to any of these seats, that perhaps all these issues should have been settled first in court, then whoever emerges winner as declared by the court then should be sworn in to prevent all this confusion that usually take place. What are your thoughts on that?
My thought is, I think we have worked so hard, and may God forgive Eradua, who won an election under a flawed process, came out and admitted that the process that brought me to power was flawed, and he took steps to have electoral reforms in this country. Now, this is what is going on. We have moved, and I may say this with all sense of responsibility because I was involved in the process, that the 2023 election is by far a more credible and acceptable process than the processes we had had. And every infraction of that process was capable of remedy by the amended Electoral Act 2022. So the culprit for trying to destroy democracy in Nigeria as at today, and from the evidence we have from each person's participation, is the judiciary. So this has nothing to do with the election. The election had taken place, and it is fairly better than every other election we had had. The problem was where we needed to perfect this particular process and improvement over time of the electoral system was for the judiciary to stick to what the laws were and stick to the principles of wisdom, justice, and equity, and to enhance and advance democracy. And the judiciary has failed. The judiciary rather will want to appoint persons to political office than to determine whether persons were properly elected or not. Because this is what we have. The judiciary is technical. It had not looked at the evidence to see how did this process go, who was truly elected. They would rather stick to a technical ground, stick to their power because they cannot be reviewed, and determine who they want to be in public office, not what the people want. So I think for all intents and purposes, the danger to democracy in Nigeria today, and I'm not talking about any other thing, the danger to democratic governance in Nigeria is the judiciary. It's becoming worse than the military takeover.
All right, we thank you so much for sharing with us your views on the show. We truly appreciate it. Many thanks for joining us today on Firecrackers.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
And that is Lucky Innocent. He joined us live from Abuja. He is a former Attorney General and Minister of Justice. And sadly, this is where we'll be drawing the curtains close on today's episode of Firecrackers. We thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have learned a thing or two from our discussions. So, my name is Iribami Salako. See you same time, same station next week. Do have a pleasant week ahead.